Welcome to Rise and Realign Conversations for the Sensitive Soul. I'm Melissa, and this space is for those of us who feel deeply, love fiercely, and sense the world in ways that are hard to explain but impossible to ignore. Here, we honor your sensitivity as a strength, not something to fix. Through reflections, realignment, and soul led stories, we remember how to move through life in a way that feels true to who we really are. This is your space to rise, to realign, and to come home again and again to your own wise, sensitive self. Well, it's always an honor for me to share from my heart to yours, because I know that there's a lot of seeming distractions in the world. And what's coming up for me right now is how, I have been sharing with the wonderful women that I work with for years now that, what we give our attention to is what grows, right? And there's a lot of angles that we can understand this. But what I really want to speak to in this moment is, there is news in the world, right? There are things happening on this planet, in this country, in other countries. And some people feel like it's really important, to watch the news and to know what's going on in the world. Um, But what I want to speak to about this is that as a highly sensitive individual, and whether you know what that means for you or you just know that, you're sensitive to different things that you're exposed to, right? That what we give our attention to grows in these types of situations means like there's a lot of fear that comes up in, listening to the news and hearing about the things that happen, right? And there are a plethora of different experiences that individuals have, right? So the news may speak to, the, well, what we might call, the darker side of experiences, right? And this happens in all kinds of experiences, right? Whether we're talking nature, whether we're talking relationships, so this is speaking more to, what happens um in a global scale that touches more people. And so as someone who's highly sensitive, right? Like there's so many different ways to understand, that what we give our attention to is what grows, right? Um and I also want to speak to how there are so many experiences that you can also hear about that we wouldn't necessarily say we're hearing it on the news, right? But like all of the different experiences that happen when people come together and meditate together, and when people um, also come together with a focused intention, on another part of the planet, even, right? So, like, this is just touching on how there are so many different experiences that people can and do have. And as a sensitive individual, it's really important to pay attention to how you feel when you are exposed to any of these, right? So whether it is the news and something that's happening that, is really fueling, fear um, in the collective, or whether you're giving your attention to, newer discoveries or realizations or, revelations even, about this soul um, experience, right? Because not everybody on this earthly plane knows themselves to be a soul. There are a lot of individuals who are, experiencing life in their physicality only. That is their framework, whether you call it their belief system or how they're wired, right? And there's no judgment on whether somebody is considered an awakened soul, right? Or whether somebody, truly operates from this is it. It's only me, and it's how I think, it's how, I see things, how I interpret things, and what I do. So, again, obviously, my podcast is Conversations for the Sensitive Soul because I do know myself as a sensitive um, individual and an awakened soul. And so I'm here to just keep sharing, my voice and my message because there are many, many sensitive individuals who, and maybe I could even share like me, I didn't used to relate to myself as, a soul having a human experience. I did used to believe that, um, well, I believe that I really didn't know because even though I was offered, a Roman Catholic education, I didn't feel it deep within me. It was an education and it was something that, I continued to participate in until I had my spiritual awakening and realized that there was so much more, and then again explored philosophy and different religions and things that resonated with me, from different perspectives there, right? But I really, again, want to bring it back to, if you're listening, then you already recognize that you're a sensitive individual. And so what you give your attention to is essential for you to know how it's affecting you, right? Like trust that felt sense. When someone talks about something, if it gives you, and again, what that feels like for you is definitely unique. So I can just tell you that, when I'm with people in my life, and they start talking about the news or, something that sounds, again, like there's this tension of fear within it, right? Like it just feels off to me, and I find my way to, going off by myself in a sense to just get recentered because this is really important to understand. As sensitive individuals, we are absolutely more affected by our environment. And, I've done other podcasts about our physical environment, right? But right now I'm really speaking to, trusting the environment as far as who's in your life and what are they bringing into the mix with you, because that is something that you want to be discerning about, and I know for me, when I had my spiritual awakening, it was a true culture shock, of living in this space of, just pure positive love energy and light, and everything was just so peaceful, healthy, happy, harmonious, and then again, the physical reality of life, became more prominent. And there were a lot of years where I didn't feel that I had a space where I could talk about my understanding as a soul or, my understanding of how the universe operates and my curiosity and interest in it, right? And so again, when we think of as highly sensitive individuals, we are in the minority, right? And so not everybody can go into those deeper conversations. And I have people in my life who I absolutely deeply love and appreciate and know about that soul connection, but our human experiences are very different. And so sometimes that just means, you know, we need to be choosy about what we say, how much we talk about these other things. And that can feel a little bit lonely, right? It can feel like you don't really belong in the collective. And that's really why I keep speaking, from my heart, because I know what it's like to live with not enough others who are curious and, can shift out of, what the physical world, is saying to be afraid of or to plan for. Or, there's a lack of trust when fear is what's guiding decisions, right? And plans. Um, and that's something that, again, the more we're tuning inward, right? Realigning with our own hearts, intelligence and wisdom and guidance, the more we shift out of that old identity of being just a physically focused, individual living in the society that you're raised in. Because, you know, the the families that we're born into and raised in, that's just our starting point. It lays a foundation, and some of it may not be what we prefer, right? But it doesn't mean we're stuck with it, right? Like, the more we are curious and open to new possibilities, to new opportunities, right, then we start to be more discerning about what we give our attention to. And again, just recognizing that it can be challenging when it seems like you're the only one, who wants to focus on the bigger journey of you're here as a soul with your own lessons, with your own spiral of, learning and awakening. And there's no need to compare or judge, right? Because we each signed up for this experience, whether we remember it or not, and we're all here for a reason. And I am again speaking to those who are in the minority of highly sensitive individuals, because there is an evolutionary reason why we are here to feel things more deeply, to sense things that are under the surface that even our loved ones, may not be able to recognize and identify yet. And it can be tricky, if you are the one who sees the behaviors, sees the patterns, you know, um, and others don't, and they stay where they are in their patterns, right? Then you might be the one who's moving along on your journey at a different pace, right? And again, no race and no judgment, because we never know when we may need to stay in an experience for a different length of time, because there could be other jewels, that we glean from staying in apparently the same, spot for a little longer. So again, I'm really speaking from my heart that, the important thing is that you tune into you, right? That you realign your heart, you know, um, and soul, right? And how you are just being your truly authentic self in each day in the most loving way. Because I'm sure you've heard me say before, I really see highly sensitive individuals as the heart of humanity, right? Because of how more finely tuned you are to to that that communication, right? Like, and the depth that you feel it, right, is a gift. And often that's what leads highly sensitives to be more kind and generous, even if it doesn't seem like that's ideal for you. And oftentimes, that is a lot of the work that sensitive women do when they partner with me, right? It's about reeling it back in so that you are recognizing where you're getting depleted, because when you are not discerning, where you're giving your time, attention, and energy to, you can deplete yourself. And then that's when, resentment can come up, or, questioning yourself or judging others, even. And again, this is really about you coming home to you, right? Again and again. Realigning is about coming home to you, to your true essence, and what you're here to live, learn and grow through, right? To tap into more of those resources within you of love, of wisdom, right? Your own heart's intelligence. So again, just wanting to bring it back to your heart center. So let's take a break and breathe love together now. I invite you to just pause whatever you're doing, except be safe. If you're driving, then now is not the time, and, listen to it again later. But, pause what you're doing and just allow your hands to just rest in your lap. Just feel that contact with your lap, feel the support beneath your body, and just pay attention to your breath for a moment. Just notice what the breath is doing right now. And then inhale deeply through your nose, and then another short inhale. And now exhale out your mouth, long and slow, just letting it all go. And again, honor your pace and rhythm, but inhaling through your nose, and then another inhale, and then a nice, long, slow exhale out your mouth. And one more. Inhaling through your nose, another inhale, and then exhale out your mouth, just releasing, relaxing, and letting go. So, this is what's really important, because when we're not pausing, right? When we're not taking a break to breathe love, the external world can be grabbing our attention, right? And it can be grabbing our attention more often than we really have the space to process. And as highly sensitive individuals, you're not only taking in more data, right? Both visual and invisible. You're taking more in and you're processing it more deeply. And when you are exposed to the news, other people's energy and their thoughts and experiences without the space that you need to process, right? And to really get clear about what's healthy for you, then you can get bogged down with too much, right? And I know from my personal experience that fear, that's a powerful one, right? Because fear is going to tap into our own past experiences, right? And the ancestral lineage that we may be carrying forward that has been unresolved, right? And so I'm certainly one to say, feel the fear, but learn from it, right? We're not running from it, but we're not letting it run the show either, right? It's information, and it's information that we want to consider, right? Because your nervous system is going to let you know. We can't always make like big leaps out of, old situations and old data that hasn't been processed into something lighter and freer and, more positive in a sense, right? Like we really do want to know, how is our nervous system um, navigating these shifts? But pay attention, like if you decide to not communicate with someone who predominantly, is bringing that kind of energy that's tapping into either, fear within you, or it's tapping into just a feeling of disconnect, right? Like honor that, right? That disconnect that you're noticing from what the other person is talking about is your clue that they are in a different frequency, a different vibe than you are, and just let them have theirs, but you honor yours, right? And that's why I say, if you need to, end a conversation with someone, or if you need to, leave the space, right? Like just honor what your needs are revealing for you. I mean, that's how you're going to realign and reclaim, your own inner rhythm, right? So, again, I know it's not the easiest to navigate because we live in a world where there are more people um, that are physically focused, and believe me, I definitely lived a time when I was very physically focused, and even after my spiritual awakening, because I wanted to understand how my body was operating, and, what did it mean to have an autoimmune condition, and neck injuries, and, how do I support my body? And, but we can also get out of balance and be too physically focused, even when we are, right, spiritually aware or an awakened soul, whatever language, resonates for you. Um, so we just want to keep coming back to our heart center, right? And remembering that, you know, as a soul, this physical vessel is our temple. We do need to tend to it and care for it, right? But it doesn't need to get all of our, waking attention either, right? That's where, the breath is the bridge, as I say it. It brings us into our body and also into our heart space, right? So we can realign in that sense, right? Mind, body, heart, and soul. Like we want to include it all, right? We are whole beings. We're not just one or the other. Um, and I definitely am somebody who, after my spiritual awakening, I, like I already said, dove into all different kinds of directions, right? But also, you know, I found myself really coming back heavy with the research. And perhaps that's why I've just been in the mental health field since I was 19, right? Like, definitely interested in, research and evidence based, approaches and understandings. And I love the work of Dr. Elaine Aron, and, being a highly sensitive person, I really resonate with what she has, shared with the world. And so, yeah, um, I just want to, let you know that that's why I've been, quietly, you know, creating and allowing it to unfold in its own way and timing, this new essentials course. It's a science informed course for sensitive and strong women, who are ready to understand, right, their nervous system, and that this is an intentional design. It's not a flaw that needs fixing, right? Like we just need to understand how our body is operating. That's a little bit different, right? And also for those who, you know, consider themselves an old soul, or who are open to, the spiritual world and communicating with their loved ones who have passed, or who enjoy talking to a psychic now and again, just to get a little bit connection in that arena. And, I just want to say that, you know, there are many women who I'm supporting who feel such relief when they realize that they can talk about these other layers, right? Like, again, I see us as needing to be honoring and aware of our wholeness and not compartmentalize ourselves, right? And so there are so many different perspectives and things that we can experience on this journey through life. And I'm just somebody who's here to say, if what I share resonates with you, I'm so honored, because I'm happy to share, what I have lived through and come to understand, to support others who are also waking up to, the gift of their sensitivity and what it means and how to honor it, and, how to just, again, reel things back in so that depth of caring um, isn't a consistent self-abandonment practice, right? That you're really tuning into you. So before we close, I invite you to return to your breath, to your body, to what feels true for you right now. There's nothing you need to fix. Just notice what's here. Where the heart leads, the body remembers and the soul awakens. And as a reminder, we are here together to rise, reclaim, remember. And that essentials course I mentioned, called Your Sensitivity is Intelligent Design, will be released within the next couple of weeks. And as part of this essentials course, you'll also have access to 4 seasonal threshold gatherings over the next 12 months. But yeah, just stay close. I will share that soon. I'm really excited, and again, I just want to make sure that it offers all of the science and essential pieces that I feel will be most supportive. So, as always, I'm so grateful you're here. And if you are not already walking this path with me, I do write a weekly Rise and Realign Lunar Letter for sensitive women. And you can always join me there. You can find everything at realignwithmelissa.com. So take good care of you. Much love and light.